Good. Well, I'm excited. I'm anxious. Let's jump in. I'm going to start with, for those that may find this valuable, I am Daron Moore. I'm a Black male. I'm wearing a black hat. I'm bald, but I have a beard and wearing a black shirt. Sesi Coleman is joining us as well. African-American female, glasses, braids, black shirt as well with a red background. And Oneka Jefferson-Cornelius is here as well with braids, glasses, a beautiful scarf, and a blue shirt. So today is an opportunity for us to hear from two phenomenal leaders and champions of change with more licenses and certifications and credentials than I can name. Oneka Jefferson-Cornelius has over 20 years of experience in the people space and is currently CEO and executive principal of Convergent Solutions, who provide robust solutions for organizations ranging from DEI work, change management, OD, just to name a few. Oneka also hosts the Converging Conversations podcast, which brings together all things people related, leadership, life, etc. If you have not checked that out, I encourage you to do so. There are some real conversations happening on that podcast. Definitely want to encourage you to do that. And the Sesi Coleman is here with us as well. Sesi, like many in our space, started in the classroom and after about 7 years transitioned to the corporate space and has not looked back, has been an individual contributor and has been a curriculum developer and is now a senior leader. And she is phenomenal in her space. And I'm more than excited to have both of these women here joining us today. So you can tell by the title, we are talking about unapologetically leading. And what that means is at some point, we have had to apologize for something. And I'm very, very curious, Sesi, when you first realized that you were apologizing for insert word here, what was that like for you?
Oh, yeah. There have been plenty of moments where I felt like I had to apologize and then thought about it later, like, nope, I probably should not have apologized. For instance, my first venture outside of the classroom was, it was a rough one, I should say, because life is what pretty much took me out of the classroom. I moved into corporate America directly from the classroom, maybe about 6 months in. And just I'm remembering the conversation on yesterday about imposter syndrome. And so coming from the classroom into corporate, that's exactly what I felt. And so every single mistake that I made, for instance, my very first, like, I'm so sorry, was my first, my first training that I had to conduct. So I created the curriculum, but I also had to travel out to teach the training. So I was working for a company called Promethean, where I had to teach teachers how to use interactive whiteboards and connect their curriculum to those whiteboards. And that first venture was back to the school district that I graduated from. And I was nervous, and I made a couple of mistakes. And, you know, by the time we got the surveys back, some of those mistakes were translated onto the survey. But at the same time, as I was discussing that information with my boss, I realized that this was my first venture. He, you know, just kept saying, you know, it happens, especially with your very first time. You have nothing to be apologetic for. But I just was beating myself up over and over and over again. And so I started diving into the craft. And it just became very mechanical for me after that, where I, you know, got it to where it needed to be. But I just felt like I didn't have to, you know, send out all those apologies because that was my very first venture. And because, you know, that connection that I had with the school system, because that was where I graduated from. I saw some of my old teachers even there at that moment. And even though they were like, you did an amazing job, I was like, well, I'm so sorry I missed this. And I'm so sorry that I missed that. But it was just one of those moments where I just kept beating myself up because I needed it to be perfect, and perfection wasn't needed at that time. So that was one that really does stand out for me.
That's I'm probably everybody can resonate with making mistakes. And Oneka, when a mistake happens, I think we're groomed to apologize for that. But when do we stop apologizing for our mistakes?
That's a phenomenal question. I think my experience was probably a little bit different. It happened, probably in the last 6 or 7 years of my career. One of the things that happens as we advance and we move forward in our career, you become not as responsible for the work, but you are responsible for the people that deliver the work. And as a leader, one of the things that we know is that, when everything goes right, you kick it to your team. It's like, everybody is amazing. If something does not go well, it's on you. And as a leader, you have to be willing to take the L, right? Sometimes and stand there and say, there was an opportunity and we missed it. And so that's probably one of the biggest lessons that I learned is sometimes we have to look at, there are some things that we do. We apologize for, we stand there, we be that barrier between our team or others. And then there are times when we have to choose, when to apologize or not to. For me, what came to mind when you asked that question, Daron, was I remember being in a situation, a senior leader, and I was just like, I'm not going to apologize for taking up space anymore. I think sometimes we go into environments, we go into cultures, we go into organizations, we meet with clients, and who I am when I came into the room was not necessarily what they expected. And I've been that person in the room, the only Black or brown person, the only female. And what does it mean to sit fully in that space and not be apologetic? I think sometimes, apologizing, if we don't say it, we wear it. And what I've had to teach myself over time is to not wear it, right? Because I've earned the right to come in that room, to sit in that seat, to have the voice that I have. And it takes practice and it takes a willingness sometimes to even quiet myself, when I'm not always sure. So, it's knowing when to apologize and when there's nothing to apologize for. As a Black female, for me, it also comes down to sometimes, I have to not just edit myself, but almost give people cliff notes, right? I think sometimes we come into spaces and it all depends on how people see you or how they expect you to show up. It may be that they expect somebody that's always jovial or always smiling. I love the work that I do. I am passionate about what I do. And that passion reads differently. Sometimes it's my hands, like today. Sometimes it's my voice or my volume. Sometimes I'm smiling, sometimes I'm not. And I think that sometimes people don't always know how to read that. And so it really just becomes about, I'm all of those things. Doesn't mean that there's anything wrong and that it's okay for me to be in that space just the way I am, that I don't have to self-edit. And I think I'm just at that point in my life, in my career, where the whole self-editing thing is kind of played out. So I don't do that as much anymore.
That's powerful, right? You mentioned, I've got to this point where this means, which insinuates there was some maturation that had to happen. There's a light bulb moment, or there's something that clicks. And what is that trigger for those of us who feel like we know when we walk in a room, we're recognized. It's noticed. For good, bad, or indifferent, we know that when we walk in a room, they know it's recognized. And for those of us who feel the need to apologize, what do we need to search for? What do we need to tap into to realize that we're not responsible for making an apology for being there or being in the room? Sesi, what do you think?
Yeah, you command the room when you get there, and you have to understand that you deserve to be in that room and you deserve to have a seat at that table. You have worked hard. You have had many nights where you've probably cried. You have had many moments where you felt like, what am I doing this for? But at the end of the day, you see how well your work has been received, and you see the grind and the love that you put into the product that you've put out. So when you walk into that room, you stand tall and you look those folks directly in the face and you let them know, yes, I am here. I'm not going anywhere. You got any questions, you ask them. I will answer them for you, but I'm going to sit at my seat at this table because I've earned it.
Period. I love it. There's no explanation.
Say these days, period, Pooh. Yes, I've earned my seat at this table.
Where does that come from? Where does that confirmation though some of us have never had that confirmation. Some of us aren't fortunate enough to be surrounded by either peers or mentors or whatever to have that confirmation. Where can we find that, Oneka? Where can we get that confirmation to be bold enough to stand in that?
Well,
yeah,
go ahead, Oneka.
Yeah. So you know what? Mentoring and coaching are passionate for me because what I purposed very early on was that I was going to be what I didn't always have. And so I've had a few leaders that have been amazing in my life, and they did not, you know, depending on professions, but one of the things that I have found is that the higher you go, right, where you are more known for your knowledge and what you bring to the table, there can be some dynamics where people hoard information. They don't share what they know. I've been surrounded by a few amazing leaders, several of them Black female leaders, who didn't count it robbery to share with me what they knew. They understood that, you know what, teaching me what they knew did not mean that it like drained out of their pinky toe, right? And they could no longer do it. They understood synergy. They understood that sharing what they knew made them better. They were reproducing after themselves. And that's what phenomenal leaders do. And so once I was I was able to benefit from that, I knew that that was something that I was going to always do. I was going to always pour into people that didn't know. I was going to always make sure that if I'm going into something, my first thought is, okay, who in my tribe can I take with me? Who in my tribe also can I share this platform with? Who in my tribe, or who do I know that wants to stretch and wants to kind of follow in this space? Because that's what is what is important. It's how do you continue to share and create with or through others. A lot of the people that I mentor, because I'm so passionate about it, it's really, look, I'm your secret weapon. And I think that that's really, really important. I don't have to be the person that is up front, right? I am perfectly fine cheering you on and pushing you from the back. And I think that we always need someone or people that will do that for us. I think as sometimes we need somebody who sees in us what we don't see in ourselves yet. And that's very, very important, right? When you're trying to figure out and you're trying to navigate cultural politics, you're trying to understand who's who in the zoo and who can I trust and who will, make sure that my name is spoken in a room when I'm not there. Who will not take credit for my work, knowing that I'm good at it, because those things happen. Not all the time, but recognizing that they do. Who is confident and secure enough in themselves that they don't have a problem bringing somebody along who's bigger, brighter, better, different, and creative in other ways. I don't know everything, but I know enough people that know everything, right? So it's about how do we broker and use those relationships to create tribes and groups of people that are just masterful at their craft, whatever those crafts may be. And so it's really important to do that, because when we all start out, the reality of it is, I don't know anybody that comes in necessarily thinking that they're amazing and a rock star. You get good at what you do over time, but the other piece of it is, as long as I have been in my career, what I will tell you is that I am still working on my certifications. I am still learning. It's important to be an infinite learner, especially in this space, because our industry and this discipline is evolving before our eyes. So what does that look like to constantly project and look at what's coming next? And sometimes what's coming next is because there's somebody next to you that's doing it and is willing to say, hey, let me put you up on this, right? Have you heard about this? Are you interested in doing this? It costs you nothing to share what you know with someone else.
What I'm hearing underlying is, whether it's building your tribe, networking, whether it's continuous learning and investing in yourself, is being intentional about doing that. It doesn't happen by happenstance. You've got to be intentional about building your tribe and growing and developing. And I think that's a big takeaway from what you just said, is you can't just sit back and hope that things are going to change or improve and you're going to find people that are going to invest in you. You've got to take that proactive step. What does that look like for you, Sesi, to help foster that confidence and cultivate that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Just kind of reflecting back on what Oneka just said, and it's super important to understand that you have to, as far as when you're building your tribe, you have to make sure that you're surrounded by the right people, but you also need to make sure that those people that you are mentoring want you around as well. So if you're a leader, let's just say you're a leader, you have to make sure that you're leading in the right manner. You can't be the smartest person in the room. Real leaders have folks around them who pretty much you can pull pieces from each person, and you're learning from each person. Leadership is not about knowing everything. And one of the things that I have learned from previous leaders that I have had is that I'm taking some of the things that used to make me sweat and scream and cry at night to become a better leader in the position that I'm in. So the folks that are reporting up to me right now, they're seeing they're seeing a leader who has pretty much been developed from some of the things that have gone wrong in my career that I'm parlaying into something right for them. So I'm learning from them as they're learning from me. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room, because that's when I know my time is up. So I want to make sure that I'm around and that my team is functioning in the manner that they're supposed to function, because I am taking every single drawback that I have felt from previous roles, from leaderships, from previous roles, and I'm turning it into something totally different. I want to do the complete opposite of what I've seen. And I'm taking some of the things that I have seen that were positive as well, because I've had some great leaders that I've worked under. But I'm bringing all of that into where I am right now to create a different atmosphere for the folks that are reporting to me now. We have an amazing group of folks that I'm leading over at Nike, but it's just different. It feels different because I'm very cognizant of what I should and shouldn't be doing. I'm very cognizant of the times that we are living in right now, because these are not the best. I don't know if I come at, let's just say you are Oneka on my team, and I come directly at you first thing in the morning with something that you did wrong. I don't know what you're dealing with, on that particular day. Someone from your family may have passed away from COVID the night before, and I have no idea. Your kid may be sick. Something may be going on, and I have to be real cognizant of that. I've had that happen. I've seen that happen. So I want to make sure that I'm completely aware of how I approach people based on previous experiences. So I'm still in the learning phase. Even though I am in a leadership role, I will continue, like Oneka said, to be in a learning phase where I want to continue to grow and learn. And it's just one of those moments where you want to make sure that you are leading folks in the right direction and leading with compassion. That's the focus.
I love it. One of the questions. Oh, go ahead, Oneka.
I just want to jump in. Sesi, thank you so much for saying that. There was a quote that I heard a long time ago that is so true, that says, beware of a leader that doesn't have a limp. And what you just said was so powerful, because that is so true, right? Amazing leaders have been through something. And yes, what they've gone through, it leaves a mark, but it also allows them to operate and float with a source of service and humility. The best leaders that I have ever encountered understand and know that serving their team, serving other people is really what our role is. And the reality is, a lot of what we learned is hard fought, hard won. And it wasn't learned because we did everything right. It was learned because, we've had some painful lessons. So I offer that as well. If there's a leader that hasn't been through anything, that they can't tell you their war stories and how they made it through, keep living, right? There may be some more that they've got to navigate through. So just wanted to share.
Man, that's amazing. I wrote that down. Beware of a leader who doesn't have a limp. That is amazing. Because when I think about is many times when we walk into a space, we feel like we have to be perfect. We want to make sure we do everything right. And we want to cross our T's, dot our I's, but we also have to understand that vulnerability of showing that, hey, I make mistakes just like you. I don't know all the answers. I need you. Telling somebody else that I need you in order to be successful shows confidence in you versus a weakness. And that aspect, I think, is really, really powerful. When, we had a question come through when we talk about building our tribe and who needs to be around us. what are we looking for? Are we looking for particular qualities or characteristics of those that need to be around us to help supplement our growth? When you think about building that and being intentional about building that, what are we looking for? What are you looking for in your tribe members? Any qualities or characteristics?
I can say for me, at my last place of employment, I was looking for a very solid mentor. And I was looking for someone who had been at the company for a while, who could really be very, very honest with me about the questions that I had, especially being a Black woman, a pint-sized Black woman at that, with a loud voice that was needed within the company. So I wanted someone who had a vast amount of experience, but I also was looking for someone who had a leadership role within the company. Not because I wanted to be a leader, but because they have seen, pieces of the company from the ground up. And for me, it was important that I was mentored by a Black man specifically, because I could relate a little bit more to some of the things that a Black man within a white company had to say. And after we had this one company meeting or what have you, I found the person that I was looking for. And I actually reached out to him and said, hey, would you be my mentor? And this is why I'm asking you, because of these things that you specifically said within the meeting. And from that point on, when I tell you he has been able to not only guide me from while I was at that company, but he's still guiding me at this company where I am right now. And he's talking to me as a mentor and coming from just the stance of, I am a leader in this company. This is where I started and this is where I am right now. These are some things that I have seen Black women in the company, in my company, go through. These are some things that you should look out for because we are misrepresented on so many levels. We're expected to come in lip smacking, tongue lashing, neck rolling, and that's not who we are. That's not always who we are. So I'm getting just the information from him that's helping me to expand a little bit more, even with folks that I am mentoring. If they're looking for a mentor, because we had this program where you're able to kind of just, choose who your mentor is. When it came to instructional design, I was a team lead at that time, didn't have that title, but was working as a team lead. So they wanted to know, like, how do we work these different programs? How are you able to speak with your stakeholders? How are you able to speak to leadership, things of that sort? So we spent time having coffee, just getting to, just learn each other and understand who we are on a personal level, to understand, well, I might not be the person for you, or this is going to make a great relationship. So you got to actually just spend time and just ask those personal pertinent questions. They could corporate questions as well, but you want to make sure that you not only connect job-wise, but you can also connect personally. So, and I still have my tribe. Shout out to all my mentors that are out there who are still emailing, and we still have our moments together. But it's just all about making sure that you have that personal connection as well as just that corporate connection.
I love it. Oneka, I want to ask a question about authenticity. When we talk about authenticity, does a distinction need to be made between what authenticity is and isn't? I ask that in the context of people may define authenticity in a couple different ways, right? Whether that's how I speak, how I dress, how I present myself. Are there things that we need to be aware of when we talk about defining authenticity and separating from what it is and what it is not?
You know what, Daron? Authenticity is as individual as our fingerprint. I don't know that there is a one set discrete way of describing and defining it. What is authentic to me may or may not be authentic to you. It may or may not be authentic to or for Sesi. What I do believe and I know is that when we are our true, full, 100% authentic self, our gut knows it. Our gut knows it when we're fronting or when we're not showing up and giving all of who we are. And again, it's really about that internal barometer, right? We all know when we're in a space and we're faking it. We all know when we're in a space and we're potentially code switching through some things. And that's not that it's necessarily wrong. It's understanding that you got to do sometimes what you need to do to navigate a space. to navigate a culture, to navigate an organization. It comes with trusting that, you know what, it's not about knowing all the things. It's about just being confident in what and who you know that you are. And that can be challenging for us because sometimes we are in environments that make assumptions about who we are. You were just mentioning that, right? So it's like, there are expectations. There may be stereotypes or generalities about who we are. And when I'm with clients or when I'm even with individuals, I often say, let's be clear, Black and brown people are not a monolith, right? So someone that you may have interacted with or have had experience with, that may not be at all how I show up, right? And so it gives us the opportunity to show up and learn about one another and to show who we are through relationship. That's why, to me, tribe is so important. It's about relationship. I often don't use the word network because that kind of feels impersonal to me. That's a personal distinction. Tribe is about community. Tribe is about shared resources. Yeah. It is about collaboration. It is about co-creation. And those are the things that are important to me about my tribe. And you mentioned mentoring. I want to make sure that we understand this. Let's bring clarity that, right, it is so important to have mentors. It is important to have coaches. It is important to have sponsors, and they are not all the same. So for those of you who may be aspiring, you know what, I want to be that next managing director. I want to be the next CLO. Understand that mentorship will take you so far. A coach will provide you with a playbook and a strategy to get you there, but a sponsor is going to put their name on the line. Yep. And be in that room and say, have we considered X, right? Your sponsor is that person that is going to say, I am going to let you ride on the integrity of my reputation. And so when I speak your name, there's not a question of whether or not you can handle yourself. What you then owe it to that sponsor is to show up in a way that's authentic. Exactly. And to be fully yourself and to bring all the things. And you also mentioned, Sesi, the importance of mentors. We see a lot of programs, hey, mentors pick mentees and things of that nature. I don't believe that. I think that a mentee sees someone who has a skill, a capability, a way of showing up, and they say, you know what, I want that. Can you share with me how you learned that? Are you willing to open up and have a conversation with me about this capability? And that's the goodness of mentors. And it's about having a board of mentors, right? They're going to be different people that you want to understand and learn and glean from. Don't be bashful about finding different mentors for different parts of your life. I've been blessed. My mentors have run the gamut of amazing, beautiful Black and brown women to one of my longest mentors is a white male. And I appreciated the fact that when I was at Accenture, probably my 5th day in, he literally showed me the contract and said, understand, this organization is going to take care of you. You will have amazing experiences, but read the contract, understand how the organization is structured, understand the value that you bring, because that is what we charge for your capability, your skill, your experience to clients. This is a relationship that has lasted years, that when I was negotiating, big decisions and career moves, this is a person that I still reach out to and say, hey, I want to talk through this with you. And he's open and he's candid and we've built trust. And he speaks the truth from a different perspective that we don't always have. And so I'm blessed to still have that person in my life. So if you've got amazing mentors, build those deep relationships, even if they're seasonal, right? Some mentors are there in your life forever, or it feels that way. And some mentors are just there for a short time, but capitalize on the time you have with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. I can resonate with that because one of my mentors is a white female, and she is actually the one who was the catalyst for me to kind of step into who I wanted to be. I mentioned this in my last session, is that for the first 20 years of my career, I was Daron professionally. I went by Daron in my interviews. I went by Daron with my coworkers. There's people to this day that still call me Daron, but my name is Daron. And it wasn't until this 50, 60-year-old woman asked me one day, what does your mama call you? Daron. Well, I'm calling you Daron. That's the name, Daron. In every meeting, she would be the only person calling me Daron, while everyone else is saying Daron. And she would make the corrections on my behalf. And she would be a sponsor. And I'm like, what is going on where she can take ownership of this, right? That helped fuel and plant that seed of confidence for me to do that. And when I was able to do that, my career blossomed.
There you go.
I started moving up, right? I can remember very vividly the first time that I had earned my six-figure salary. And it was that feeling of, I made it. Right? Even though we all know that, you know, 100K today is not going to be what it was back then, but nonetheless, I felt like that was it was a stamp that, okay, you're moving right. And one of the questions that came up is, how long were you in your space before you were told or you knew that this is what I'm supposed to be doing? This is, you know, this is my purpose, or I'm in the right role. Sesi, how long did that take for you?
Oh, it definitely wasn't immediately. I can tell you that. I would say it took about maybe 8 years for me to understand that I was in the right spot, because I had different elements of curriculum development that I was working on, but it wasn't until I was at CDC working as a contractor, and I worked on this project called Public Health 101. And once I got recognized for that, because that was like my first major project that I did on my own, and it was a featured project that was like on the front page of the CDC's website, that's where I figured out that I was definitely in the right spot as an instructional designer. Because I doubted myself so much before. I didn't have, you know, everything that we're talking about right now as far as having a mentor and making sure, you know, I didn't always feel like I knew what I was doing because coming out of the classroom, I was self-taught. I was a self-taught instructional designer. So I did my due diligence as far as learning what I needed to learn on my own, but it wasn't until I got to that point that I realized that I was in the right spot. And when I tell you after that, it was literally uphill from there. And I'm tearing up a little bit because even then I really didn't know. I felt like I did not know what I was doing with that project, but it got published and, you know, my name got out there a little bit. And then I got pulled into this project, that project, into another job from there, into another job from there. So it wasn't until I reached that point 8 years after I stepped out of the classroom that I felt like I was in the right place because someone actually recognized my work.
Mm. Yeah. Before you were even able to recognize
it. I was even able to recognize it. So yeah, it was one of those moments where I had to sit back like, this is really where I'm supposed to be. And you know, I'm gonna keep trucking from there. And that's what I've been doing, just driving the truck.
That's right. That's right.
Since that moment, yes.
I love it. Oneka, when did you know?
You know what? First, let's shout out all of us who cut our teeth in instructional design. I remember, you know, my first role was in financial services, in associate development, and I was the infamous project coordinator, right? Which means all the things, right? So you're setting up rooms, you're helping to tweak and define content. And I think the first moment that I knew, I was actually tasked with a big project to actually build a computer learning center, so that operational staff within the financial services bank that I was working for could actually take self-paced learning. And I literally poured everything of myself into this project. I was choosing corporate swatches. I was choosing colors on the wall. I was working with the technology team to make sure that we had the best software, the best PCs. How do we create? And at the time, it was like, how do I find all of this off-the-shelf content? How do I help them to find and create learning paths? Now, a lot of these things were because instinctively and intuitively, I was feeling my way around what does it mean to be in learning. Didn't know that that's what I was doing. I just knew that I had clicked into something that I was passionate about. I mean, I was up there nights and weekends because I wanted people to have amazing experiences. You know, for those of us that have been in this space, there's nothing like the aha when you see a light bulb go on and somebody gets it. They've learned something new. And, you know, it's like it opens doors, and that I wanted to be able to always foster environments where people could do that. Whether it was physical environments or virtual environments, or having strategic vision to say, what does this look like to have an entire workforce have this type of access? So those were the kinds of things that got me. If I'm really honest, and I'm glad my brother is not on this, I knew that I was called to learning. I don't think I picked it. I think it picked me. I was that kid at like 8 years old, teaching my brother his alphabet, like in our room, right? And he had to get it, and I had to make ways for him to do it. I had forgotten that. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago when I said, you know what, let me reevaluate. Is this still what I want to be and do when I grow up? And I had to remember, I had to go back to the beginning and say, you have always been a teacher. You have always been somebody who wanted to share what you knew. And so it's the purity of that is amazing. And it's really important to get that, because sometimes we aspire and we want to go to the top. We want to be the CLO. We want to be the thing. But what I would encourage everybody to do is not lose the love and the passion that brought you to this discipline.
Correct.
Right? Because, you know, the job may be amazing. Would you say, Daron, the 6 figures are banging? It's amazing. But you can also lose the love. You can also get lost and distance yourself from those things that brought you to this space. So it's always good to go back and reflect and say, do I still love this? I ask that question now. And, you know, is this still what I want to do? Is this still what drives me? Is this still what gets me? And when the answer is yes, then I know that I'm on the right track. Because
that shows through your work, right? It will resonate through your work, and the opposite will resonate through your work otherwise. If you are aligned with something you're not supposed to be aligned with,
it tells on you.
Know it. You're going to know it. It's going to show. And eventually it's going to run dry. So to come on back to those roots, you know, it's very easy for us to forget about those moments that we had as children or as young people that brought us joy, that fulfilled us, that made us complete. And we lose that because we so busy trying to chase the dollar or trying to satisfy other people. But when you're able to make that connection between your purpose, your passion, and the projects that you work on, amazing things happen. And as you're trying to find that out, right, one of the questions here is, what is it like finding and functioning in your authentic self, and then getting in front of a new audience? This is where vulnerability becomes crazy asset for you. We talk about finding a company's core values. I would encourage you, find your own core values. What are you not willing to negotiate on? What's a non-negotiable? Yes, you want some benefits and find that package, but I know that I need to work on a team that I'm able to build an environment that allows me to challenge you, where I can call you out in a compassionate way, but I will also be your biggest cheerleader. You talk about sponsorship, I'll go to bat for you. I got your back like bra straps, as I tell my teams, right? I got you. If you're here for me, I need to be able to build that. And if I'm not able to do that, I'm not the leader for you.
Correct.
Tap into what's really important. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
What stands out for me on that is I've made probably 2 serious career pivots in my life because of that very thing. Being in an organization and, you know, being that managing director, being that senior director, and being in an organization that was not conducive or healthy for me. And being asked to make some decisions. I actually had a client who was the VP of a function, and he was one of my most senior clients in this organization, who literally asked me, why do I talk in meetings? And, you know, how would I know things about, you know, we brought you in to stand up a change management COE, you know, so how is it that you're telling us about how it impacts talent and our workforce and learning and things of that nature? Because this is my space. Well, there's no way you know that about us, right? And having to make some evaluations and having to make the hard decision to really say, you know, I love what I do, but let's be clear, my soul is not for sale.
Correct.
And because I am compensated well for what I do and what I know, that does not give you permission or access to treat me poorly. And understanding that, standing on that and who I am and my values, sometimes that costs you something. And I'm not saying that it's easy, but I'm saying it's worth it, right? You have to know what's going to make it so that you can sleep well at night. And there are, again, no regrets, but understanding that sometimes we have to navigate situations, we have to navigate cultures that may not be psychologically safe to us or to you as an individual. And I just encourage anyone that's a part of this session or that's listening, there is nothing wrong with taking inventory and making sure that the work you're doing is in a place and on a team and in a capacity that is healthy for you and that acknowledges you and sees you. And that's not always easy to find. As I've grown in my career and as I've matured, or as my grandma would say, keep living, right? A lot of things don't make sense to us when we younger and we scrappy and we making our way. And it's like, but keep living, baby, keep living.
Yeah.
What looks like it makes sense and what you're willing to put up with or tolerate or do changes over time. Honor that and keep living. Just know that, sometimes to be a person that walks and operates in excellence and integrity, you may have to make a different decision, and don't be afraid to pivot.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid to pivot. Sesi, in our closing minutes, when we talk about leading unapologetically, what do you want our audience to leave with and think about in owning that authenticity?
Just continue to build on yourself and be exactly who you are. Build on your craft, but still go into those spaces and let folks know exactly who you are. Don't change who you are. Don't put on a different persona from room to room, because at the end of the day, like I told you guys when we met the other day, no matter what room I'm in, as I am pushing 50 next year, no matter what room I'm in, you're going to continue to get this little Black girl from New Orleans who graduated from an HBCU, who has learned to say no, who has learned to say yes, who has learned to say maybe. But you're going to continue to get the person who has grown within this space, who will continue to grow within this space. But I'm going to continue to grow within, this particular area that I'm in as a leader. But you're going to get the most authentic Sesi that you're going to ever deal with. So I would say just continue to be exactly who you are, and don't bend or stretch who you are for each circumstance that might come to you per day. Remain vigilant.
Amen. Oneka, takeaways.
We are living in some really interesting times. I can't say enough. Find ways and places for you to have your joy. It may or may not be in your work. It may be in your family. It may be in something that is important to you. We have to also learn sometimes to separate what we do and who we are. It took a while for me to figure that out when I was younger, right? I put a lot of value and I attributed a lot of my identity to the work that I did. But here's the thing, I am good and bad and amazing if I never do this job again. And so I encourage you to have a sense of identity and worth and value that is about who you are, not what you do. So it's keeping that balance. And it's also just about continuing to just be who you are, understanding that you don't have to be a leader to have influence. I think a lot of times we think that's interchangeable. You have some powerful and amazing people that navigate and have influence and are able to influence big and major things, but that doesn't mean that they're sitting in that top seat. So know the difference between authority and power and influence, and then choose wisely which one you want.
Authority, power, and influence. Amazing. I would wrap it up with encouraging everyone to do the work. And that's the work with yourself. Have a conversation, and a very transparent conversation with yourself. My mother taught me the most dangerous man in the world is a man who can lie to himself and believe it. So have a conversation with yourself and do the work about who you want to be before you step in front of a bunch of people. And that work may take a while, and it's continuous. It never stops. You're going to find out the person who you were 5 years ago may not be the same person you're going to be now. You know, the person I was before I was a father is not the same person I am as a father. And that stuff is going to change. Continue to do the work. And I promise you the rest will fall in place. I thank you, ladies, for participating in this conversation. This has been phenomenal. I encourage you guys to check us out. LinkedIn, go to Converging Conversations Podcast. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. and peace. Have a good one.
Have a good one, everybody.